Hi friends, my name is Juliana and today we're going to be discussing the time that I met Ganesha on DMT and then made a painting out of it. This was actually the first very profound interaction I had with a Hindu deity that sparked many more interaction with Hindu deities and led to me making a whole art series based on these interactions with these deities. So in the past, before this event, just to give you some context, I had already been practicing a lot of yogic traditions for probably about a decade and had been visiting ashrams, even though at the time my primary practice was very Buddhist based, a lot of the 8 precepts of Buddhism and meditation based on the teachings of the Buddha. That was my primary focus at the time. But this really switched my gears when I did NNDMT and from there directly interacted with Ganesha. In the past, there was definitely in a lot of my psychedelic trips a lot of Hindu-based energies and Hindu-based themes, but it wasn't until this experience where I was working with NNDMT by myself, and to my surprise, when I went in, I was actually my main focus for that journey was to find some insights of how I could let go of some health issues I was having at the time. So I went in to try to just recenter myself because I was very lost at the time. DMT I've been using it for ceremonial purposes, but at the time it had been a little bit since I had done maybe like a few months since I had done it, and I found myself in a very negative headspace and in recurring negative thought loops over a health condition that I had. And I decided to do a ceremony to go in there and try to get some wisdom, since that had been a place that had often provided very deep insights and new perspectives that had helped me out a lot in life. So I went in with that intention of trying to get some insight on how I can relieve myself from this health issue and the negative thought loops that had come out of that health issue. So when I was in there, I very often see beings, but they're more of the machine elf or like gesture beings. And everything, of course, started to turn into fractals and beautiful colors of light. And then I started to see this temple of lights start to form. Very colorful, almost like neon lights, fractal temple. And I went into this temple. I felt guided into it. And I realized it was Ganesha's temple. And I saw Ganesha there sitting on a throne in the midst of his beautiful temple. And this was very delightful to experience. The energy was very beautiful. And I was like, oh, this is the perfect opportunity. Ganesha is the remover of obstacles. Here I am before him. So I went up to Ganesha and told him the extent of my situation, what I was going through, the health issues, and that I wanted to get better. And Ganesha didn't say much at first. He just listened. He was a very good listener. He listened very intently until I did my whole spiel. And then I asked him, can you please get rid of it? And he replied, yes, done. And I was like, really? He's like, yes, trust, done. Like, very direct, very few words. And then I was like, oh, thank you. Awesome. Okay, I'll try to trust that it's gone and that you're taking care of it. And he communicated in a almost telepathic kind of way. I didn't hear his voice besides what he had said first, but he communicated to me in the way that often these beings communicate in the DMT realms, that if I wanted to remove any obstacles, to chant his name, to chant Ganesha's mantras. That was a helpful other tip to help me out. And then I finished my journey, and I felt very inspired. So I went ahead and I was chanting a lot of Ganesha mantras And that further inspired me to create an artwork, since I'm a visionary artist, to create an artwork of Ganesha. I'll actually show it now. I'll put it somewhere over here. But I got inspired to create a artwork of Ganesha's temple, him sitting on his beautiful throne, and the holographic neon colors that I saw. Of course, in the actual experience, everything was like glistening and moving and morphing, so it's hard sometimes to take a still image from such a dynamic experience, but I did my best to capture the essence of that experience. And what's cool is that this actually ended up becoming one of my most popular artworks, which was really cool. A lot of people resonated with Ganesha, and I continued to later on work with DMT, and it started to become a common theme. When I'd go in there, I'd start to see deities. I later ended up seeing Krishna turn into his cosmic form, also known as Vishnu, and became very inspired, creating an artwork about that. Even saw, while I was creating the artwork, Krishna come and show me the way his robes were and stuff, so I could depict him accurately. And later had some interactions with Shakti and her Kali form, and that was some beautiful lessons about not being afraid of that energy and embracing that energy. And of course, my favorite, they're all wonderful, but my favorite, Shiva. And I actually had a lot of interactions with Shiva, and I feel like that's the deity that has stuck with me the most, and that I feel like the most direct connection to. But yeah, Ganesha was really cool to depict, and while I was making the Ganesha artwork, I did a lot of mantras while creating it to really fill it with that energy of Ganesha and that experience. And I named it Remover of Obstacles because that's predominantly what that journey was about, was removing an obstacle. And I wanted to make this artwork so that other people could meditate on it and chant Ganesha's name and hopefully be relieved of their obstacles. And the way I think of these deities now is that some people, since I have made a handful of paintings of deities, they ask me like, oh, isn't this a very common thing I get is, do you feel like this is some sort of cultural appropriation? But I do believe that these deities are universal and they're not just pertaining to India, because if we did say it just belongs to this one country, then we would be almost admitting that they're not real. Versus if they're universal and they exist somewhere, then wouldn't all humans and all beings be able to benefit from experiencing them and working with them? And I believe that they exist in certain dimensions. Sometimes we can access these dimensions through various altered states of consciousness, such as meditation or DMT. And it's interesting how originally the ancient rishis worked with soma, which is thought to have been a psychedelic, potentially a form of DMT. It's not exactly known. In the Vedas, it talks about soma and its use. So in a way, I speculate, as many others do, that these ancient masters that first discovered the deities might have been on some form of DMT or psychedelic that let them experience them and gain their wisdom and create depictions from them. This is all just hypothesis, but I find it very interesting how on DMT there's been a number of cases of people, even people that know very little about Hindu deities, that have experienced them. I have in my mind rationalized this as there is the infinite, formless, pure consciousness, the oneness, the source energy that is all there. It all dissolves into formlessness, beautiful light and love. But from there, the dualities must start to create this world of form that we are experiencing. So first they split into Shiva and Shakti, yin yang, the opposites, the dualities. And from there, those dualities kind of split off, like multiply. And that's where you get a lot of the universal archetypes, such as Ganesha and all these other deities are some very powerful primordial archetypes in existence that exist in this beautiful fractal realms that can be accessed through meditation or DMT or very deep astral projection, things like that. And then they keep multiplying into perhaps some Deva realms and eventually into here where we have so many forms of beings, billions and billions or trillions of considering animals and all the different life forms that exist in this dimension. But if we kind of go back up, going towards the one, they get lesser and lesser, and then you get to a point where perhaps these universal archetypes exist, and then eventually there's just two, and then eventually there's just the one. But this is all hypothesis, and this is just what I've seen in my innermost journeys. Actually, the idea was from a DMT journey where I saw it do that multiplication of beings, and that insight came of how it worked. So yeah, but I'm just sharing my journey, and for those that resonate, thank you for listening, and just food for thought. Definitely not claiming to have it all figured out. Some people might say, hey, maybe you just met Ganesha in your mind, and that is a valid possibility, but this is just the truth of my experience, and I'm just sharing this. I like to share artworks made out of these experiences and put them out there for those that have had similar experiences, and for them that felt genuinely very real and very touching and very mystical, an important event in their life. They can have these recollections of these moments through the artworks I create, the poems I also create about them, and videos like this where we discuss them. So thank you so much for listening, and if you'd like to see videos like this or some of my guided meditations, things like that, feel free to subscribe to my channel, and lots of love to all of you.